Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to episode 20 of project LS400. Now for those of you who are new to the channel and for the new subscribers, if you want to know a little bit more about me and my Lexus background, you can watch the start of episode 19. For everyone else who wants to have a quick update on project LS400, allow me to talk a little bit about the things I've already done to the car. If you want to start with the beginning of this episode's project, you can go to this timestamp over here. Now let me pick you up and show you what I have already done to the car. First up, let's open the hood. There we are. I have some working gas struts in here, which I'm very grateful for. Project LS400 started in October or maybe even November 2021. I bought a car in August in 2021 and I had to do some basic maintenance to the car. It was the cheapest LS I could find online, but later that year I parked it. As I said, I wanted to do some basic maintenance, take the spark plugs out and change the timing belt and serpentine belt, maybe do the water pump and all. All of that started this project and I have already done it. As you can see, the engine bay is in as new condition. I put a lot of work in here. The spark plugs were seized and that's what started episode 1. It took me several hours, an entire Saturday to get all 8 spark plugs out. And then I went ahead and removed the faulty cable loom that was in there. The cable loom was installed by the LPG installer in Belgium. That installation was very, very poorly performed. And when the car came to the Netherlands, at some point they removed all of that. So it's cheaper in road taxes. It still is expensive in road taxes, but with the gas installation out, it's that cheaper. So entire mess under the hood with cable looms and LPG lines running there. I removed all that and restored the engine to its original condition. I did a timing belt, water pump and all that. It can be a bit of a tricky job and I explained all of that work in several earlier episodes. I replaced the power steering pump. That had been an ongoing project too. But after episode 16 or so, I finished working under the hood. I've done some work on the interior. I took the driver's seat out because I had to do some maintenance to the electric adjustment mechanism. And as you can see, the interior of the car is in very great condition. Only problem I had was with the instrument cluster. As you can see, it needs a background illumination and that wasn't working. So I took it out, made some repairs. In a later episode, I took out the ECU. Not because it's faulty, because I needed ECU to test in my friend's LS400, who has the same LS400. And I did an ECU repair on his car, on his ECU. And that's actually all the work I had done to the interior of the car. Well, my plan was to start working. As you can see, the car is parked in a corner here. I don't have any room to access the car from the right hand side. I have some room over there. Anyway, the plan was to start in front of the car, work my way around the left hand side, do brakes and all necessary work there, do some work in the trunk and then move the car forward, park it here, do the rest of the car and basically I should be finished by then. But in the last episode I ran into a problem. In the later episodes I started working on the brakes. I overhauled the caliper and I cleaned everything in here in the wheel well. I had to replace some ball joints and I wanted to do the same on the rear, which is basically a simple brake job. Replace the parking brake, shoes, a new rotor has to in there. I overhauled the caliper and the one thing I wanted to do is clean the wheel well because I noticed there's some rust over here. And I wanted to treat that with an underbody coating. But then I looked up, saw a little bit of rust, and I started poking. This is the result of, well, not more than 30 seconds of poking. So there's a problem I did not foresee, and I really have to address it for the upcoming inspection to get the car roadworthy again. Now, this is, in my opinion, the one design flaw of this car, and that's it. Brace over there next to the air suspension strut. A lot of dirt can accumulate on this corner over here. Now, if you wash your car regularly, well, I think you always should put a water hose in the wheel well and clean out as much mud as possible. But apparently someone didn't do that. And I'm pretty sure this car has been parked outside for quite a while. It was in some state of neglect, and well, that ended up in this. So, that's where episode 20 begins. Now here's a part of the car you haven't seen much in this series, but finally we're headed over to the rear. Now of course, as I showed you, there's this rust I need to address. It's in this corner over here, which is the worst. This is the left hand side. And I have my work cut out on the right hand side too. Now, the problem is with these cars, the fuel tank is in the trunk, and I'd rather not work in the proximity of a fuel tank, especially when it comes to grinding and welding. So I had the idea of taking the fuel tank out, but then I run into the next problem, and that requires a bit of planning. Because in order to do the welding up there, I need to make a new brace in there. It's structural, so I really need a brace in there. I need to take the air suspension strut out, which isn't much of a problem, and I can put it back in. But I have to move the car over to this wall later to have access to this part over here. So in the meantime, the car has to run, and it has to run because I need the air suspension to work. I checked the workshop manuals, and there is not a way you can activate a compressor and have the air suspension working without running the engine. So for that I need a fuel tank back in, and then I have to move the car to this wall over there, and then take the fuel tank out again and do the welding over there. Now the plan is to go work on here, make a cover for the fuel tank. I have fire retardant blankets, and planning to make a cardboard box over there, so I'm pretty comfortable with working in that corner over there. So the plan for now is start working on this corner and do that on a later moment. And as you can see, I already took the electronics out in here, because when you have to work, to weld and to grind, I want to have all the electronics out. I already disconnected the battery. There's an amplifier for the subwoofer and a smart control box that tests brake lights. And over here is where the electric antenna usually lives. And over there's still one thing I need to do. Let's take the CD player out, take all of the upholstery out. So that's the plan for episode 20, guys. It means a lot of work, so let's get started. This is the fuel pump control unit, and I've taken all these electronic devices out of the trunk because when I'm welding you have strange currents flowing. I try to keep my earth point, my clamp, close to the welding area as possible, but you never can be too sure, especially with these devices which are hard to find. This other box is the air suspension control unit. So we definitely want to have that working. So now we have all electronic devices stripped from the trunk. It's time to get out a back seat and some panels over there in order to get access to the air suspension strut with top mount lifts around there. There are a lot of panels that need to be removed. Panels on the C-pillar over there, on the door sill down there, but we have to start off with removing this seat, and I take it that this seat has never been out. So there are two small tabs below each seat. We need to pull with a needle nose pliers. But the first order of business is to find those tabs. Well, it turns out it's just a matter of pulling it loose. No tabs to be found. I have to keep in mind we have a heated seat, so we have to disconnect a wire. It's over here. So I wanted to take this out even when I hadn't to. I was curious to see what I can find underneath. And already can see some things. It's heavier than you think. Sorry guys. Here. Yeah, money. Those are some Belgian francs. The car is from Belgium originally, and it shows. Seems I have 1 franc and a half franc. So I recently bought a vacuum cleaner from Craigslist, handy to have at a shop. Found this little piece of foil. Now it doesn't show well on camera, but I think it goes on top of a champagne bottle. So someone had a party in the back here. And also I found these tiny buttons, which I think go along with lingerie. So, well, leave something up for the imagination, don't you think? So next up is the removal of the seat back. It is a 12mm bolt, which is fairly tight. You don't need to loosen those clasps. You can just undo the bolts, rotate them so you have access to the bolt for the seat back. Oh, go work on a Lexus, they said. It'll be fun, they said. Anyway, seat back can come out now. Just have to disconnect the heated seat knob or heated seat connector so I can locate that. Out it comes. Sorry guys, I have to get you. Sorry guys, I kicked you over, but anyway, here's the seat back. When you take this out, you really have to look for these guide pins that go in the body of the car. When you take them out, you can easily damage and scratch the door sill. Be careful with that. And yes, this is the connector for the heated seats, which I tried to show you. Anyway, well, these things are heavy. Glad they're... So now, welcome in my rear seatless LS400. Next thing we need to take out is the parcel shelf, and it's clipped in place by those tiny clips in here, and I think I can pull it out. Maybe I need to remove the cover of the subwoofer, and then we should have access to the strut mount. Let's see, we clip this out. I have the idea that this car was parked with the windows or the trunk open at some point in time, because I can see a lot of water damage. I mean, traces of water. Let's see if I can pull this out. No, I can't. Will it come out? No. Ah, there it is. It's clipped in place. Are there any screws? No, there aren't. Let's see if we can pull it out. Over here on the right hand side. There it is. Oh, it's cracked in the back. As you can see, not sure if it shows well on camera, but it had to suffer from moist water traces all over the place. Let's get you guys over here. And this is the top mount we need access to. There's a cable loom to the trunk, which I showed you before. And here is the top mount. Over here is an actuator for the suspension, which stiffens or smoothens the shock absorbers. So first thing we need to do is take this cover off. There it is. This is the actuator for the air suspension. Top with two 8mm head screws or bolts. And there it is. It's just a stepper motor with two slots in there. And they turn those two. I'm not gonna touch it. I'm just gonna make sure they stay in the same position. I try not to move those, otherwise I have to adjust them to this stepper motor. But be careful, take note, I'm filming this right now. I have a shot of this, and for certainty another shot to be sure the position of those slots so they can easily go back in. Okay, now we have access to those top mounts, but before I do that I have to loosen the lower bolt on the suspension first. And not to forget, I have to bleed the air out of the system. And that's what we're going to do first. With pressure out, we don't have compression on here or on the bolt down below. Seems we got lucky. And there is a little air. And that's the air suspension blade. I can't zoom in, but there are two rubber O-rings we may need to replace on a later moment. So now we're ready to take the lower strut mount off. The strut mount is held at least by a bolt and a nut on the front. Both are 19mm. Now, since the sway bar link is a bit in the way, I try to crack it loose from the front by loosening the nut with my torque wrench. Get a 90mm spanner. See, I need to get the sway bar link out of the way. Otherwise yours truly can't get the bolt out. But you get this bit more out of the way. How's that for it? Ah, there it is. Okay. Okay guys, remind me to order a new pair of sway bar links. Anywho, that's loose. It should be able to come off. But first I'm going to loosen the top mount nuts. There they are. Alrighty, it's loose now. We should be able to pull it out from down below. Let's see if we can get this out. We should be able to compress the air bladder, and there it goes. Can we compress it to the point it passes that brace? Almost. Whoops, there it is. One very expensive, but yet still working air suspension strut first gen LS400. And be careful with this, guys. Those bastards are expensive. Now there it is, the complete air suspension strut. The air bladder is in here. It's covered with a skirt, I would call it. I'm gonna remove this tie rib. I'm gonna clean it. But first, it's very important to plug this hole to avoid any dirt getting in. Also going to do the same with the airline that's still in the trunk, and it will stay in the trunk. And I'll put these back before I lose them. Now let's assess the damage in here. This is the strut in the middle. That's structural, so it's completely rotted out. As you can see, onto the top. Not sure if this hole was in there, but that needs to come out. And also this part over here. My major concern is this part over here. I'm gonna scrape it clean, and I'm gonna cut this out to about here. You can see on the underbody coating where it's brown on the outside, that is how as far as the rust came. So I'm gonna cut out this section. I want to try to make a straight cut line and this structural brace in there, and also I need to make that one. Now let me show you. I already got the material for this. Let me show you. This is some mild steel. It's 0.8 of a millimeter thick, and behind there is this 3 millimeter plate, and this I intend to use for the brace, to replace that brace. Anyway, I'm gonna start this, and I'm gonna do that off camera because it's a messy job. It's a tedious job. It's not fun to watch. I'll pick you up once I have this whole rusty shebang out of here. Well, folks, you're in for a treat in this episode, because this is not nearly half of the rusted iron I took out. This is how things look now. You can see this upper part. There are two layers. This is quite sturdy. That rust is on the surface. The main problem was this pocket in here I had to cut out, and it's a bit hard to access. There is a pocket inside the car, and it rusted from the inside out. So let's head into the trunk. I had the impression that the car was left with the trunk open or the windows open for a longer period of time, but the rust actually started in that pocket over there and worked its way underneath the underbody coating to this area here. Now that's what remains of the brace that was in there. Now what I am going to do is cut a little bit into that upper layer where I have two layers, so I have more material to weld to. And what I am going to do is take this piece out because there was a small hollow section in here. It's a bit hard to see. There was a small hollow section in there that accumulated a lot of rust where my finger is peeking through at this moment. Now I am going to get a spot weld drill those spot welds out this and that, so I can remove those parts, then start shaping new material. Well, for the last 2 hours I've been with my big old head in this wheel well, cutting things out and just discovering more and more rust. And this is the part of the tub that's facing the outside of the car, and the top right corner I need to make it as much as a 90-degree corner as I possibly can. Now rotate the camera a bit and stick my head again in. And this is the front of the wheel well where I need to weld a new brace in. That corner over there, yeah, I need to clean that up. Now it's hard to see on camera at this moment, but I need to find a way to get the underbody coating out so my welder has something to adhere to. So that might become a bit of a problem. Well, let's head into the trunk. I have my pointing device, and this was the most difficult corner, and I think water has accumulated in this edge over here. Not so much on the wheel well side towards the outside, but in here, this is where it all started to rust. It made its way underneath underbody coating into this area where those two large holes were. And well, I have to make plans on how to fill in these gaps. Luckily I ran into some clean material. that I can weld to, and I had to cut out this brace. There were some spot welds in there and the rust crawled underneath there, so that needs to be replaced too. Well folks, it's the following day and I had a good night of sleep, albeit with some muscle pains. Working inside a wheel well with power tools is unjustifiably a position that I'd rather not be in. Unjustifiably in a position that I'd rather not be in. But that being said, I went in today, I did some work with my small belt grinder and cleaned up the area so I have a clean metal surface to weld to. What I want to start off today is making cardboard templates for the panels I need to reshape. And I think I'll start welding, well, not today. First I want to have all the pieces, the metal pieces in place, the replacement pieces, and I have to figure out how everything went together, because the parts I took out were so rotted it was very hard to see how everything went together. Now fortunately we have the right hand side of the car, you can see how the top and the braces and all went together, but at some point there were 3 layers of panels spot welded together, and that's where the water came in. You can really tell it started rusting from the inside out, so now it's pretty hard to see how everything went together. Now we don't need to make this factory original. The most important thing is that is a solid piece of bodywork, because it is a structural piece, the strut tower. That's why the brace is in, and it's really important to make it strong again. So first thing I want to do is make cardboard templates. Let me show you how everything looks right now. Let's find a nice seating position. So this is how this panel ran behind here in the corner. It met up with that brace. See if we can fit this in there. So basically, okay, it's metalworking time. Now please note this won't be an extensive tutorial on how to do bodywork, and so there are several good channels on YouTube that are very informative and educational. If you want to learn more about metalworking on cars and get into the basics of metalworking, I can highly recommend Carl Fish's channel, which is Make It Custom. He has a custom car shop and he does great work. And he has a great way of explaining things and how to do these things with, well, very basic materials. So I'll blink in the link up in screen. What I do, this is the cutout I made. That's the brace that's in the back of the car. It has to be a fold in here. I scribed a thin line on there. And this is basically the outline I need. Now what I'm going to do is gonna trace it with a Sharpie. And just get my tin snips and see if they're ready for action. So that's why. Okay. Now there's the first cutout. I'm gonna smack it with a hammer to flatten it a bit. Let's get my bodywork kit. I think I'll use this hammer to smack that fold in. Maybe can you bend it a little by using my vise. Gonna place this on my gauge. It's very steep. Okay, I'm going to test fit this in a car first. So here we are. This is where it should fit. It follows the contours. There is a little return line in here, but I can get that in. And that is how that's how it should fit. Well, before I forget to film everything, this is a cardboard template I made, and for the hole in the rear I made a template with painter's tape. I'm going to show you. If you have any complex curves in your bodywork, you could use this method using painter's tape and then put it over the hole I did and then trace the outline. I'm gonna cut this out and then transfer it to my sheet metal and then have a go with the grinder and my tin snips. Okay, we're a couple of days later, and as you can see I took the rear bumper off because I need to address some rust in the wheel arch too. That's for the next episode, but I found it more convenient with it off. Well, these are the fill-in panels I made. There's only a few, but it cost me an awful lot of time to get them to size. The most important being this one, because this little brace is part of this one here. Sorry, a part of that one there. And that's my reference point. That's that corner over there in the wheel well. And this plane here will be my reference point. So that's the one that needs to go in first. And also I need to fill in this gap that cut out on made. And once I have that in place, I'm going to tag all the other panels in place so I can use my hammer and dolly to get them in final shape. Here are my tiny little vice grips. And here's my welder. It's an oldie with goalie. It's an inexpensive one, but as you know, I like cheap tools. And I use this welder to restore a couple of Nissans and my previous Lexus in the past, so it's a good one. Got the first new piece in. This is little brace here, and it's nice and flat. I checked and I ground off my welds. I had to get used to welding again. Then comes this piece. As you can see, I drilled 2 holes in there, make small rosette welds on there. And once I have this in place, I can bend it over until this upper area meets up with this structural piece. I'm sorry I can't film all of this, it's so cramped in here, and my welding helmet is in the way, but I'll show you each time I made progress. Status report after my first evening of welding. I got everything towards the outside in, including that brace up there. It's currently Thursday evening, it's 9 o'clock, and I started this afternoon around 12 p.m. And well, I've been working continuous, and finally I got things closed. This is how it looks right now. It's in its zinc coater priming. I have to dress up the welds tomorrow, and I'm gonna use a little bit of seam sealer to tidy it up. Now this is a part you won't see because there is a panel in front of it, but I want to make it look as neat as possible. In the wheel well I had a lot of trouble welding, but anyways, this is also in its primer, and you can see I have the brace in. It was very hard to weld in here. All in all, it took me 2 full days, and the problem is once I'm wearing my welding helmet, I just can't move my head around. So this was really tiresome, and honestly, my welds aren't that nice to look at. But it's safe to say it's better than it was, and I'm pretty sure these welds will hold. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is apply seam sealer, and once that is in, I'll show you the end result. But man, am I tired right now. Well folks, we're nearly at the end of episode 20. This was a tedious job to get done. I didn't notice the rust when I bought this car, and I'm a bit surprised with how many rust there is in this wheel well and in the corner there. I'll show you later on. Anyway, what made it difficult is that this area is very hard to reach, and to be honest with you, this is the kind of thing that's caused by neglect, and that's getting these cars on the scrapyard. And so by doing this, I think we save this car for now for the scrapyard, because they have to do the other side too. Anyway, what made this difficult and so time consuming, that it's a very hard area to get to. And especially when you have to weld with your welding helmet on, sticking your head underneath here in the parcel shelf. Well, actually you can see a thing, and the same goes for the wheel well. That was really hard. It took me a full day to get the inside of the wheel well done, just to give you an example. And also there was a lot of contamination in the steel, because those panels, those tops, are stamped in a different, less precise method than the way they stamp body panels. So you have a lot of little dents, and there is a primer on there, an underbody coating, and maybe a rust. So that's fairly hard to weld to, and that took a lot of time. Before I sign off, I want to show you the end result. I'm gonna pick up the camera. Now you can clearly see that I've been welding in here. The paint, I just painted it with the rattle can. And by accident I found the exact right color for the car. I wanted to test it on this area here. You can clearly see that someone has been welding in here. You can see some little marks of spot welds there. I'm gonna cover that later, let the paint dry first. Now let's head over to the wheel well. And there it is, the result of working 3 days straight on a single strut tower. It looks a bit messy, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna hold. Happy with how the brace sits. Maybe gonna apply some new underbody coating, a second layer under there to cover up the marks I left in the seam sealer. So anyway, this is much better than it was before, and I'm happy with that. Let's do this. Turn to this corner. This will be the project for the next episode, and this is an area where I can film my welding and show you the work I do, how I do body work a bit better. So, well folks, that's all I have for this episode. I hope you liked following me along. If you did, give me a like, maybe subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or constructive feedback, let me know down below in the comments. If you would like to help support me, help support the channel, you can go and buy me a coffee. I'll leave the link up in the description too. And for now, I'm gonna close up, tuck this little cable back in, put this on the trunk lid, close the trunk, cover the car up, and I'll hope to see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.